Good morning, everybody. This is Brian Miller. Welcome to this morning's coordinated entry training for the Eastern COC, particularly the Lehigh Valley system. I believe it's a pilot. Now we are moving toward being a program itself. We are going to be covering the entire coordinated entry system, and it's going to be kind of broken up into two parts, just to give you guys a quick overview. The first part of it is mostly going to be for what we call our assessment sites, our call center and our assessment sites that actually do the intake of the clients entering the system, perform the screenings, and then perform the referrals and placement on the community queue. That part will probably take, anywhere from, 40 to 50 minutes to kind of walk you through that process. Then we'll probably take a quick break, and then the second part will entail the second part of the training, which is more the for referral partners, but it's also for assessment sites that do double as referral partners, those that can also serve clients as well. And we will look at how to accept referrals, rejecting referrals, as well as managing the community queue, how to pull clients off the list, how to search the list for client matches and such. What we're going to be doing is the rest, the whole training is pretty much going to be a demo within the system. Like I said, we'll stop probably at one part after we get through the assessment section of the training to see if anybody has any questions. If there is a chat box that should be available to your screen, you should have like a command bar up near the top or the side of your window where you can click on it. It says chat. Go ahead and enter in a chat question if you have any questions during while we're moving along. I'll try to pick them up maybe during the training, but at least when we stop, I'll be able to go ahead and answer those questions or thoughts that anybody has. We are going to be in the training system, and we are going to be showing you an update specifically to the assessment process or assessment workflow that we are planning to release into the production system tomorrow. So this is kind of going to be a preview as well for our existing users that have used the system. For those that are new here and this is new to the system, this will, all be new to you, and this will be the process that you will see in the main system starting tomorrow morning. So let's go ahead and get started. The system is, since we do have a few new users, it is a web-based system. HMIS uses a third-party software called ClientTrack to handle our system, and it is web-based, so anywhere you have internet, you can get access to it. You get a username and password, and you plug it into the actual website, of course. And a couple things that we want to show here when you log in. A couple important options. Now, I'm an administrator, so I have a lot more options than most people. Most people only have one or two options, are your work group and your organization. Your organization, also called agency, also called provider, they're all synonymous for the same thing. It's who you work for and who you're going to enter data into the system. Make sure that that's the organization you work for. Most of the time, 9 out of 10 times, you work for, one organization, and that will be your default. But the work group is the one that's the important one. We have placed all of the coordinated entry functions, the assessments, the community queue, VI SPDAT, everything is within the Eastern Continuum Coordinated Entry Work Group. Now, work group is kind of like a role in the system. So depending when you go into the system, you're thinking, okay, what kind of job am I going to do? What role am I going to play? What data am I going to work on? That's what you equate to the work group. So anytime you're going to be doing coordinated entry tasks, if you will, you want to make sure you are in that work group so that you can pick up these features that I am going to be I'm going to show you. You go ahead and hit save and use these settings, and the system will pop up in the screen, and you're going to be placed directly on what we call the client tab. Now, I know a lot of existing users should be used to the main navigation of the system. I'm going to just take a quick second to show for anybody that may be new here is some of the navigation of the system. The system is based on these menus over here, and these menus provide functions that you can use to collect data, view data, depending on what tab or workspace you're on. As you said, right here, we're on the client workspace, and it's right here. It kind of tells you what you're on. Now, if you click this option right here, it actually comes up with a carousel. And as you can see here, it's kind of got like a 3D, interactive carousel where you can go through the different tabs or workspaces that we have within your work group. Now, as you can see here, the Eastern Coordinated has the Client tab, the Home tab, and the Home tab is kind of where your reports are. That's more of a reporting tab for you, so we're not going to show that much during the training. The Client tab, which we're probably going to be in exclusively for the first part of the training, is where, what you would expect, clients. It's where you do all the client data entry. It's where all the workflows and assessments are done. And then there is also a Provider tab. Now, kind of what I told you before, agency, organization, provider, they're all kind of synonymous with the same thing. A provider within Client Track is basically your agency's referral and community queue arm of your organization. So this is actually the Providers tab is where the Eastern Community Queue as well as referrals are located. So we'll probably be checking out, we will be checking out the Providers tab in depth in the second part of the training. But to switch work groups, all you have to do is click on that option and select what work group you want to work on, and it will automatically switch you to that section. And as you can see, each tab will give you a whole bunch of different folders and a whole bunch of different options within those folders. So we're going to go back to the Clients tab. And like I said before, this is pretty much the default tab that you're going to be placed on, and this is where a lot of the data collection is going to start from. And we are going to start with the assessment sites. Those, the call centers and the assessment sites, those are the ones that intake the clients entering into the system or need help. And right up here, we actually have an option called Coordinated Entry Intake. Now, just as a reminder, this is our training site. So what you're going to see here will be placed into production by tomorrow morning. Because right here we have this this is what's currently in the production system. We're going to be showing the new stuff that's going to be put in the system tomorrow morning. And when you are an assessment site call center and you're speaking to a person for the first time to collect their data, the first thing that you want to do is you want to go ahead and click on this Coordinated Entry option. Now, this is what we call a workflow within Coordinated Entry or within Client Track, HMIS. A workflow is a way to kind of build a flow or a string of screens or systems that allows you to, enter in, do your data collection and allows you to move along intelligently through your process from start to finish. So that way you don't have to, remember where to go, jump from screen to screen. The screens will actually show up in order for you. Now, one thing I do want to do before we start on the client intake, which is the first screen that will come up, is with the menu here, there is actually and I'm going to open up this screen a little bit so it's a little easier for everyone to see. As you can see, there's a little hide, almost like one of those tax, where you can tab it or not. By default, this menu is open. So if you click on this hide menu option, what it will do is it'll actually hide the menu. So anytime you select an option in the menu, and you can just reopen it by clicking on this option, show the menu over here, to allow you to navigate around. But as soon as you click an option, it'll actually close up, and that way you can get a full screen. Now, I usually use it with the menu open, but I don't do as much, constant data collection as you guys, so the system allows you to choose. So, all right, here we are. The first screen within the coordinated entry workflow actually comes up and is our client intake. Now, for some of our existing users, this is a change from the past. We used to start with the pre-screening, and we used to have the client intake or the selection of the client in the second step of the process. We have switched this around. We do hope that selecting the client first in the process will make it more streamlined going forward, so you don't have multiple times of having to select the client. So you just do it once on this screen, and then you will follow through in the rest of the screens with the client that you've either created or selected in the system. We've also added in some call history visit information here to help, because we know that the assessment centers, and especially the call centers, are getting a lot of return calls, so that this can help with those return calls. So to kind of go through with some information, the first thing that we do here is this is sort of like a client search screen is basically what it is. And the first thing that comes up is you want to scroll down to where the actual search is. As we see here, we don't have anybody selected on this part of the screen yet, so we don't have any history on them. The first thing you want to do is we want to go ahead is enter in, and I'm actually going to close that, is enter in a first name and a last name. That's what I actually recommend when you're first during the search, is go ahead and enter in a first name and a last name, because as you can see, those are the first that are required. And the last name actually has a little magnifying glass on it, and that means that as soon as you're done entering it, the system is automatically going to perform a search in the system to see if this client already exists. And all you have to do is tab off of it, and the system will automatically well, automatically what it'll do is it pops up a search screen. And what you can do is, and it automatically does a search on whatever information you've entered. What I recommend is just entering in the names here at this point, and then doing a search. And it will return, any matches that it finds in the system for John, Aikman in this example, or whoever you enter. At this point, you can do as many searches as you'd like, and we actually recommend it to see if you can narrow down the person that you may be looking for. And you can enter date of birth, social security number, ID if they have it, you probably don't, but phone number, and you basically continue searching here until you find a possible match. Now, there's a good chance that the client is not in the system, and as you can see here, as you're searching through, if there are no records found, that means that the client is not in the system, and you can go ahead and hit cancel or close this screen, and you can be confident that the client doesn't exist. So when we move on to the next step, the system will automatically create this client for you. So once you've done the search, what I always recommend is after you've gone in and done the search, if you select an existing person, it will actually fill in any of this information that's come through. If it is a new client, like you can't find a search, once you close that, I recommend you go back and fill in whatever information that you get from the client, you know, you're able to receive from the initial interview, whether it's social security number or date of birth, because this information, when you hit next step, will be saved permanently with the client in the system. Now, at this point, the system also shows you, you know, during your search, what the status is. As we can see right here, this is a new client. We haven't selected an existing one, so we know when we hit this next step button, whatever this says, basically, that's what it's going to do. Now, what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to reset this search here. We're probably going to use John Aikman to go through the process, but I want to show you some searches based on some existing clients to kind of show everyone what it looks like to find an existing client and how to pull them down within the search itself. So you can always, anytime you're on this page and you're searching and you're like, oh, well, I want to start over, you know, I messed up the date of birth and I don't want to retype it, you can always hit reset search. And basically what it's going to do is it's going to reset the entire screen for you and let you start over. So what I'm going to go ahead is put in Bob Peters. And as you can see here, I have a Bob Peters that I have found. And it also gives you, you know, social security number information, date of birth, gender, other information that helps you match up to make sure that Bob Peters we're looking at in the system is actually the Bob Peters we're talking about on the phone. And you go, okay, well, I know his social security number is last four. Okay, yep, that matches. That's definitely him. So if you do find a result that matches, you want to select them. And by doing that, you can kind of, hopefully it transfers over in the webinar. The hand is actually over anywhere on the record. You can actually just click on it, and that will actually load the client on your screen. And any existing information for that client will automatically load, and it'll actually tell you, hey, is this client owned by, you know, do you own this record? It's going to say yes. And it's actually going to pull in any information that you previously collected for that client loaded on this screen. Now, the neat part about existing clients, about finding them, is they possibly have data that they've already entered. Maybe they've entered the system. Maybe they're just an HMIS client that's from 2 years ago, so they haven't entered coordinated entry. So they might not have any call history, but at least for deduplication purposes, you want to select them so that you can continue using the same record. But let's say they have visited coordinated entry before. What it will actually show is it'll show, you know, like this person, oh, well, here's their most recent visit, their most recent VI SPDAT, and it also tell you if they're currently placed on the queue. So as we can see here, and this is a client I actually just did testing this morning, so that's why I pulled them up. So as you can see, this is someone that just called this morning, and I actually went through and did a pre-screening and a VI SPDAT on them. And it also comes up with these options up here for any existing clients where you can actually go ahead and click on it, and it will show you the data itself for the pre-screening. So you can actually view the pre-screenings that are associated with this client. You can also look at the VI SPDATs for this client itself. You know, if you want to view the VI SPDAT, it'll also show any referrals this client may have had. And one also nice part is coordinated intake notes. And we'll get into this a little bit more as we make the transition from the assessment centers to the referral partners in the community list. But we give a link to our coordinated intake notes. And what these are kind of a custom note system that was built specifically for you guys for coordinated entry, and it basically allows all of your partners, you know, all the assessment centers, all the referral partners to basically review, add notes for a specific client or household that everybody can see. And it's kind of, hopefully it's developing in kind of a good communication system for everybody. So this, having this link here can really help because you can actually add in, you know, an intake note of, hey, caller just called back, you know, it's a follow-up call. I'm not going to do a new screening or SPDAT on them. They can be reached at this number. So that, you know, once we get down on the second half of the training for the referral partners, when we're looking up this client or maybe receiving referrals, that information will be available to whoever's working with this client that, you know, they also contacted 211 again or went into this assessment site again. So it's a good option to have here within the system and on this note screen altogether. And then at this point, when you hit next step, the system will then take you off, you know, into the pre-screening VI SPDAT steps of the process based on whether it's a new client or whether you've selected an existing one. So I am going to go ahead and reset again. I just wanted to show you guys, you know, the benefits, you know, some of the improvements that we've made here with also allowing you to search as the first step. So you don't have to collect data along the way for someone that, you know, may have already had data in the system, that sort of thing. So we are going to go back to our, I believe, I think I'm going to change his name. Can't remember. It was something Aikman. As we can see, this client is not in the system because I want to go through the system with a blank client for everyone to see. Hopefully, everyone's still with me. Okay. Now, one thing before we move forward is we have a client sharing option down here on the client intake. And as you maybe have caught, when you select an existing client, it will pull in their previous client sharing, so it does save. What this option is, this is actually something very specific just to coordinated entry, and it's basically for the assessment sites and call center, is a way to get verbal permission from the client to share their coordinated entry information with all of the other assessment sites. So that allows for a yes or a no. So depending on the client's answer of, hey, do they want to share the information with other assessment sites just for coordinated entry data? This is a little bit different than the standard ROI that we have in the system because this is just for coordinated entry. But you can select that there, and it actually requires you to at least enter in a yes or no, so it doesn't skip there. Once that is entered, you can go ahead and hit next step, and then that's when you know, we're going to actually create a new client since this is new. And it does some other duplicate checks within the system to help deduplicate the clients. And the next screen it comes to, once you've gone through the client phase of it, is the pre-screening. And this is changed just a little bit from the previous as well, although the actual questions in the assessments are exactly the same. It asks, you know, may I have your first name and last name, telephone number, and then it asks who refers you to us, asks for the zip code of your last permanent address, what kind of help are you seeking today? And we have 3 basic kinds: shelter, rental assistance, and other basic needs. I'm going to skip that one and come back to it. As you can see, that's the only one that is actually required. We actually have logic based on that helps determine whether they should continue on in the coordinated entry system. Where did they sleep last night? Current ID, health or safety risk, as well as if they're a domestic violence client, if they would prefer to be referred out of this coordinated entry system and directly to the domestic violence hotline. So those haven't changed. One thing that has changed is the system now, because before it was kind of an open option since it was the first thing that you selected. We did have some search options in there where you could search by name to pull up existing clients, but it wasn't, I don't think, as streamlined as this is. Since you picked the client on the first step, the system automatically knows who the client is, and it's going to automatically show you any existing pre-screenings that may be directly associated with that client right here at the top. Now, since this is a new client, this is going to be his first pre-screening. So you're going to have to go ahead and complete a new pre-screening for him. But if this client has had pre-screenings before, the system allows you to select existing pre-screenings to actually load on the screen to be the default pre-screening, or this is the pre-screening I want to use going forward in the system. So it gives you a little bit of flexibility of looking at historical data specifically for the client that you're on. So hopefully that'll streamline the process a little bit better there. Now, with what help are you seeking today? These are rules that are set forth that depending on which one of these that you select, the system kind of has some smart logic that will take you on different routes. If you choose shelter, which is the main reason, the main purpose of the coordinated entry system is to provide housing and shelter to people that are literally homeless. The system, basically gives you a message. You're going to complete this pre-screen. You're going to, go forward with the VI SPDAT, and then you're going to move forward with, referrals and or placing them on the community queue. However, if you select either rental assistance or other basic needs, since those are service needs that are outside the purview of, the coordinated entry's main service, what they're trying to fill, the system will actually stop the process and not continue on with the VI SPDAT. Now, it will collect all this information. We'll still have, the call that came in, the meeting that you had, and the pre-screening, but the VI SPDAT will not need to be collected, and it'll actually give you options to, manually refer them to other, other systems that they can be held. And I can actually go through this a little bit, because I think I can backtrack. Now, if you do have rental assistance, it does ask if you have a court order of possession. If yes, and then it does enter in number of days. And it asks for the date, and it automatically calculates the information there to help with that. I believe that's for the at-risk stuff. But at least in HMIS as of now, if you select rental assistance or other basic service needs, it will not take you to VI SPDAT stuff. What it will actually do, and I'm going to show you because I believe I can circle back and re-edit the pre-screening. Once you're done with the pre-screening, you hit Save and Next down at the bottom. There should always be a Save and Next or Save down at the bottom to continue with the process. What it'll actually do is it'll take you to a secondary screen where it'll ask you to, hey, are you going to, if you want to manually refer this client, that's fine. We're going to end the pre-screening. Go ahead and, provide the client with out of the system contacts, maybe refer them to a HAP program or some other prevention program that you know in your area. And that will finish the process. Now, new to the system, before with rental assistance, which is also synonymous with prevention or homelessness prevention, what we've actually added is we have added the ability to send a homeless prevention referral directly through HMIS. So if you go in here, it gives you the option to either manually do it or send a referral. We are in the process of still collecting and setting up the providers that can provide these types of homeless prevention services in the system. So as we get going, this option will become more useful in the future. So I'm going to go back to the pre-screening. And it does something similar, just to show you the different outcomes. If I go to other basic service needs, like food, health care, maybe it's education, employment, if you go ahead and hit Save and Next on that, it also takes you to refer to appropriate services. Please end the pre-screening. Now, at this time, we don't have any other, we don't have the option to refer to any of those types of organizations through the HMIS, so those will need to be done manually. But it does end your process there. But what we're going to do is going to show you the shelter, since that's the main focus of the coordinated entry system for the literally homeless. And this is actually showing you what it looks like up here when a person does have a previous pre-screening. You can choose it. You can even delete pre-screenings that are mistakenly added or maybe duplicates. We do have that option as well. But we're going to go ahead and put it on shelter because that's what this person needs. And when we hit Save and Next, the system is going to realize, oh, okay, well, that person should be in the coordinated entry system. We want to move forward. And it gives you a screen that basically allows you to begin your VI SPDAT. And I know someone had a quick question in the chat box about that sharing option that we showed on the client intake. Does it also share the VI SPDAT? Yes, it does. When we refer to coordinated entry information of what it shares, the pre-screening, the VI SPDAT are included in those CE items that get shared. There's three choices. We basically have three kinds of VI SPDATs. There is one for single adults, there is one for families, and there is one for single youth. So basically, depending on whether, the type of client that you're serving, whether it's a single client, a family, or a single youth, you need to select the specific VI SPDAT. And I'm going to go ahead and pretend this is just a single client. So I'm going to do that, hit single adults. And it will go ahead and load that on the screen. And each of the SPDATs are slightly different, have slightly different questions, but all of these should match exactly what, your handouts have been provided, what you guys have been trained with from org code. Now the single youth and the single adult ones are similar. There's only a couple question differences, while the family ones and the single adults and single youth do have a fair amount of differences. But again, they should match. You should be seeing a perfect electronic version of the templates and the VI SPDATs that you should be all familiar with from your training. That's why I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on the VI SPDAT going through question by question. I think you guys know these much better than even I would. But what the system does, it is broken down into sections, and you do go through and answer the information the best that you can. And what the system does is it has scoring sections, as well as, like, I believe they call them domains, where as you answer the questions, as you can see here, I answered safe haven, it stayed at 0, but if I answer outdoors or other, which it asks to specify, it does change to 1. So the system actually does score on the fly, so you can build the score as you are answering the questions, and it does that pretty much all through the sections. I believe the youth or the single adults has, I believe, 5 or 6 sections that are broken up into sets of questions that are answered either through, you know, text boxes. Most of them are yes or no type questions, some drop downs. But one thing that I do want to mention is this family grid here. This is built into all of the SPDATs. I know it's probably only shown to be required with the family SPDAT, but what we actually did is built this into all of them, and this is to help collect additional demographic information, because as you saw from the initial intake, even when you're creating a new client, we collect date of birth and social security number. There are a number of demographic information such as, you know, gender, race, ethnicity, veteran status that we don't collect. This is actually the best place to collect this information because you're going to see by default will always be the person you're working on, I guess is considered the head of household, you know, the main person in the client. And you can actually go through the grid and answer these questions here. Most of them are drop downs, as you can see, yes, no. One of them is a little bit different than the others. It was actually pointed out recently. That is the race. This is because it is a multi-select list, meaning you know, a person only can be assigned or identified with one gender or one ethnicity. Race is a little bit different. If you see here these little dots, if you actually select on that, it will give you another pop-up box, and this is where you can identify the one or more races the client is. The client could be more than one race, and you are able to select more than one race. Now, if you do, there more times than not in reporting, they're showed up as, you know, multiracial, depending on the reports. But that is why it's a little bit different within this grid than the other ones. Now, one thing important to remember is to save the information, you want to hit that green box right there, because if you just like close it, nothing actually gets saved. So you want to make sure that you do click that green box there, and that will save it. And you'll know it's saved because it'll actually show you part of the answer there, or part of the selection. As you can see, that we had put in the person was white, so he, you know, that shows it through there to kind of give you an indication of whether that data element's been completed or not. And again, it's more of a hyperlink. You can also select on that to go in and change that information there as well. Now, this is a single adult, so there's probably, most of the time it's going to be a single person, but especially for family type SPDATs, this is also where you enter in multiple, your household members. And as it's kind of designed, you have you know, it's designed to have one row per client or one client per role. And, you know, as you add the clients, you can go through and update all of their demographic information. And it allows you, as you can see here, to kind of add, you know, even if you got 10 household members, you know, adult and 10 children, the system will allow you to go through and update all those clients and their demographics there. And I just want to point out that I do have some of these visual cues here or scripts placed within the system, so please let me know. I try to keep up with them, and I try to make them fit in the whole terms of how they work with the HMIS screen. So if if anybody has any updates or questions or anything like that, please let me know so I can make these as helpful as possible. Okay, once you go through the SPDAT, and I'm going to go ahead and get some scores here. Because the one thing great about the SPDAT is as you add up the scores, it's basically, giving you a total score. And that total score is able to provide you an output or a recommendation of what type of services would best fit this client's needs. And once we're done the SPDAT, that is exactly the next step in the process that we go to. And there's also follow-up questions. You can enter in contact information, and as I said before, people, we do share this information. So people can open up SPDATs, see contact information so that they can contact the provider at a later time. So it is important to put that stuff in. Now, we also, here's another feedback and survey prompt that I have down here. We do have one question that's not on the SPDAT templates, and that is the survey question that you need to ask to every client once you have finished with the SPDAT or the overall process, and it asks, were you satisfied with the service you received from me today? And we have the following selections to choose from. You'll also have the ability to upload a paper SPDAT if you want, where you click on that file and basically say you scan the SPDAT version to your desktop or to a folder. You do have the ability to upload it to the system if you want. Although I know a lot of people are directly just creating it electronically, so that might not be as needed as much now that people are using the system in real time. But it is there if needed or desired. Now, once you are finished, basically you hit the save button and the system will refresh. Now, the one thing great about the SPDAT here is it doesn't require, you don't have to get to a certain point before you can save. And I know it can be, especially if you're doing it on the phone in real time, sometimes they can take a while, 10, 15, 20, 25 minutes. I know sometimes, we're a web-based software, so sometimes internet blips, connections, issues happen. So we kind of recommend that when you're doing something like a long SPDAT, something that is adding this much data, every at least 20 minutes, go ahead and hit save, whether that's on the first time you load it or not, just to make sure that the data gets sent to the database. Because you can sit here and actually just hit it multiple times. You're not going to go anywhere. And basically every time you resave, it's going to add whatever data that you added. So just one of those things that might be a good habit to do, especially for those times when you're doing really long SPDATs or it tends to, you're spending a lot of time on the screen. Just kind of like a little tip there. Now, once you have saved the SPDAT and you are ready to move to the next step, you're comfortable with the score. And as we kind of look here, it looks like this client received a score of 4 for the single adults. we've got eligibility and referral option down here at the bottom of the screen. And you do need to save the SPDAT at least once before that will pop up. And this will take you to basically the last step of the assessment, a workflow or process. And this is where you either, this is kind of an and/or process where you can, send referrals specifically to emergency shelter and/or place the client on the community queue for other non-emergency shelter services. Now, what I've actually done, and since I've been kind of reading up on your new rule changes in terms of how you want to send out referrals and who you want to put on the community queue for what services, I've actually done a little update to this screen here. It's pretty much the same. I just changed it visually a little bit to hopefully make it more informational, as well as better fit what you guys are doing right now. The first thing that comes up is it shows the client, the type of SPDAT, and the score. And then you've got two different areas. It basically shows your emergency shelter housing area, and then it shows your community queue service area. Because based on the actual SPDAT score, and I've actually put the scoring matrix right up here in the top of the eligibility form here to kind of give everybody an understanding of what services relate to what scoring level. And we've got 0 to 3 or emergency shelter, diversion, rapid rental assistance, and the middle are TH and rapid rehousing, while the higher scores are for permanent supportive housing. Now, it's my understanding that based on these scores, you want to place clients on the community queue for those services. The one exception is for referrals. I believe that the Eastern and Lehigh Valley Eastern CSC has decided that they only want to send referrals for those that are having an immediate housing crisis or have an immediate housing need for emergency shelter. And they're handling all of these emergency shelter needs directly through referrals and not through the community queue. So what I've basically done is broken those up into those two separate rules, or, and/ors. The top section basically shows emergency shelter housing. Now, if they have a score of 0 to 3, they're automatically eligible for that, receiving a referral for emergency shelter housing. However, even if that score is above 3, say they score, like in this example here, this client has scored in the middle range, so it is showing that they've passed for rapid rehousing and transitional housing. However, the case manager or the assessor needs to make a decision that, whether this client has a immediate housing need or not, they can send an emergency shelter referral to try to serve that need. Now, for any non-emergency shelter service, the other ones down there are, diversion, permanent supportive, rapid rehousing, rental assistance, and transitional. All of these we are not sending referrals to. So anytime a person scores and is past one of those areas, you do not want to send a referral for them. You want to place them on the community queue. And we actually do that through this Place on Community Queue button down here. This community queue area is pretty much more of just an indicator. Like you can't select the flag or anything like that, because I actually removed the referrals from this area for the existing clients, existing users, that I kind of had it all together. So I'm hoping this broken out will help people understand a little bit better the special rule for emergency shelter. So what I'm going to do going forward, so I can show some referrals on the backside as well as placing this client on the queue. I hope those rules made sense. I know Lehigh United Way 211 has a sheet, coordinated entry sheet typed up, 2-page quick entry guide that has these rules laid out, and they're really easy to follow, and that's actually what I use to try to improve this screen, so that's a great resource for that as well. But what I'm going to do is assume that, all right, this client has a score of 4, and he has long-term, medium to long-term needs of rapid rehousing and transitional supportive or transitional housing, but he also has an immediate housing need or immediate housing crisis. So we are going to actually send out a couple referrals to show you how that process goes. And now to do that, you basically click on this button here, this little check mark. And what that'll actually do is that's going to launch into our referral send process. Now, at this point, you're basically sending, it's a one-to-one process where you as the assessor and what organization you're with, you're actually going to attempt to send a referral request for emergency shelter to another provider in your area that accepts, emergency shelter. A couple things that are required. It's actually a fairly simple process. It auto fills in the referral date. It actually auto picks the referral service as well. However, we don't lock it in, so you can change. These are all the list of the referrals you can send out. So in a pinch, you can send out other referrals if needed. I just want to make sure there's not a system limitation on things. But it should default to our emergency shelter housing. The provider group will default to your Eastern provider group, which is now the Lehigh, and will eventually expand to the entire Eastern continuum. The one option that you do need to select is the refer to provider. And that refer to provider is basically who I'm sending this referral request to. So what the system does, as soon as you click that search icon there, it's actually searching the system, and it's looking for all the organizations that could possibly provide emergency shelters services to this client. Now, by default, it comes up and it brings up these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 providers. Now, this is training, so probably it's not as up to date and doesn't have as correct address and updated information as production, but the production system should be good and up to date with that. You can also see these 2 HMIS service agencies. That's the agency I'm using right now as a fake agency for my testing in there, so you won't see that. But the system also allows you to filter by county. So that will actually help, especially when we do our expansion in the future, because right now I know it's a lot of Lehigh and Northampton. But if you are in Lehigh, and you're looking for someone in Lehigh, you can filter just by Lehigh or filter by the county, and it will only give you those selections there. And you can also enter in, address information, zip code information as well to further filter, maybe a geographic area for the providers you're trying to find. Now, where we actually have a display project inventory option, because by default this kind of just shows, hey, this is a provider, this is their address. I know that they have at least one program that accepts emergency shelter. You can just select them, and that is, you can then send them the referral. But we do allow a little more systematic, like drill through or drill down, to kind of take a closer look at the information or these individual providers. And when you click that option, what it actually does is it doesn't just show the provider. It actually shows each individual program. You know, that's a shelter in this case, and the same rules apply for all of the different referral services, although emergency shelter is the main one that you guys are using. It'll also show target populations, because I know Valley Youth House has things set up for youth, and we do have their target population set up for youth here. This information can help with making determinations on who to send to, as well as it also shows available inventory. Now I know there's, we have issues with getting inventory up to date, and I know that's a next step process, but it is in the system, and it will display accurate inventory information showing their current available rooms, beds, and or vouchers if they are set up within the system. So all this information here can help you make a better, hopefully a more informed decision on who you want to send this referral request to. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and pick this organization here. And what it will do, and that's pretty much all you need to do for referrals, is go through and pick who you want to send it to. At that point, all you have to do is hit finish, and it will send that referral to that organization. Now, a couple things. We do also have these coordinated intake notes. As you can see, they are everywhere. They're not only there for intake, they're also on the community queue that we're going to show you, but they're also available within the referrals themselves. And what you want to do is, this is actually the enter referral note option. And when clicking this option, it actually will attach a note specifically to this referral. So you could say something like, from the sending referral, something like that. Basically, any information that that will be viewable by the receiving organization, provider, as well as it's also going to be able to be seen by everyone in the whole system. So anybody that comes across this client. So it's also good to build history for that information, because then if we go look at the intake notes, oh, there it is. It is there and can be seen by everyone. Once that's done, what you'll see here is there's also an automatic email option that goes out. You want to make sure that this is checked, and it is by default. So, and what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to send an referral to CACLV. And this is just training. We'll also pick it up as well. What it does is it pops up this email box, and we've got kind of like a template where it says, hey, this is an incoming referral, some basic information, and if set up correctly, the information, the two emails should fill out. If we do have, primary provider contact within the system, some of them may not, but it does allow you to type pretty much anybody you want. This isn't anything special. It's basically just an HMIS email client. It's like sending an email through your Outlook or Gmail. So you can go ahead and send it to anybody you want. I know a lot of people send the emails back to themselves as well, which is great, so that they can make sure that it went through. And these help for people that aren't in the system all the time. They get an email, then they know they can log into the system to basically pick up this referral. Now, at that point, once you sent the referral, it puts you exactly back on the screen where you were, and here you are back where you were, and it will show all the referrals that you actually send out. You can then, of course, repeat that process. And I'm actually going to go ahead and to kind of give us some extra data, I am actually going to send out another referral. I'm not sure if that is the proper process. You probably process is to send out a referral, wait for a response to see if they can take them or not. The referral can either be accepted or rejected by the receiving agency. And accepted, and we'll cover that in the next step. Accepted basically means, hey, I can serve the client. Rejected means I cannot. Once, the referral is, if it happens to be rejected, that's when you probably want to go back and resend another referral as well. However, it is up to the group and the committee on how they want to send out referrals in the system. And again, you can do that over and over again. You'll stay on the same screen until you are finished with referrals. Now at this point, we also want to place the client on the queue, especially if there's any flags down here. These are all the services we definitely want to put them on the queue for. We have to go to the next step, which is place the client on the community queue. So we're kind of, doing two things at once. We're sending out referrals for immediate housing need if they're there. Again, if they don't have an immediate housing need, no referrals need to be sent. The system will automatically pull up the client's name. If they have any household members, like if you've added them, you do want to add them to this record. It helps with reporting and demographics, and also that people know that there's additional family members with them. These are the service needs. These basically help, tell people that are looking at the list, hey, what does this client need help with? And as you can see here, it's got the same 5 that were on the community queue, and it will default to the eligibility results based on the SPDAT. You can change them if you want. However, based on the rules, these should default fill to the correct ones. Now I know there are the ones where they overlap, where the rapid rehousing and transitional, so you might want to go one or the other if you provide additional assessment for them to know which one is actually the better fit for them. But for this case, I'm actually going to leave both of them on there because the client could have multiple service needs. You pick the county. That's basically, the county that they're currently residing in, and it's basically the primary, place where they want to try to receive housing from. That's also helpful from a filtering and reporting standpoint to locate clients on the list. The priority, to enter that in. I'm sorry, just looking up some documentation on the rules for priority. Anybody that, when you're putting someone on the list, if they have, a need for rapid rehousing, transitional housing, or permanent supportive, they should be put with a medium priority. Anybody with a diversion or a rental assistance service need should be added with a low priority. So at this point, it is manual. So based on the services, and it's kind of like the SPDAT, if they have a 4 and above, they're a medium priority. If they have a 3 and below, you want to set them to a low priority. And you can also add in extra notes, contact information there as well. Although I recommend not using the comments there and actually using the coordinated intake notes. Once that's done, you hit a final add to community queue, and this will place them on the queue. Now at this time, basically you're taking back to the standard VI SPDAT screen, which within the area can also be found within this. Down in the menu, if you're on the client, you can actually go down within the coordinated entry intake work group. There's a pre-enrollment screenings option here. And you can view the client, whatever client you're on, all their pre-screenings, as well as their VI SPDAT assessments. So that's a good area to go into. And the reason we put you back here is for the coordinated intake notes. We do highly recommend that, kind of like any contact you have with the client or each stage, that you go and enter in some intake notes to kind of explain, you know, what's going on or where you last left the client. Because as we can see here, we've got the referral that we sent out. Probably should have been 2 because I sent out 2 referrals, but I was trying to speed things along. The system automatically does an automatic placement on queue community list or intake note, just kind of as a placeholder to show when they got placed on the list. But as soon as you've done that, I highly recommend adding another coordinated, an intake note. So you can go ahead and add in some kind of note, about, a lot of that is kind of redundant since what we've done, but you'll probably want to add in extra information that's not, known within the system, like, hey, he's, got this, special condition or has this need or can be reached here. But it is important to add that in so everybody can see it, especially the people on the back end, so that they can better help the client. Okay, that kind of does it for the first part of the training. It actually took a little bit longer than I thought. We went about an hour, a little over an hour, but it is kind of the main part of the system. And that's basically the new and hopefully improved way to, for our call center and assessment centers to enter our client, into the system, walk through the steps, and do the whole referral or place on community queue. I'm going to go ahead and check to see if anybody has any questions before we go ahead, and I know we've got about 20 minutes left. That should give us enough time to kind of quickly cover the referral partner community list side of things. Someone asked, who and, how and who edits and updates provider room availability. That's actually the individual providers do. It's actually more of a program level thing, part of base HMIS functionality, where, you can go into we have a housing tab where you go into your facilities, you set up your vouchers or your beds and your units, and then you can actually enroll clients into those beds and units. It's kind of a check-in, check-out module where you place them in and out of your beds and units or in and out of your vouchers. So that's actually done by the caseworkers for each individual program. Someone also asked, when doing a shelter referral, should we click on the refer to user to choose the appropriate individual at the agency? You don't have to. It doesn't actually change where the referral goes. Referrals in HMIS are a, agency to agency transmission. So it doesn't matter who you pick at that, refer to user spot. Everybody in the receiving agency can receive it. It's just more of a way to flag it for a specific user. The other way that it's useful is if you do select a refer to user, when that email pops up, the to email will be populated with that person's email address. That's probably the biggest benefit up from it, that you'll be able to send a direct email to them for that referral. All right, but it is not required. Okay, now what we're going to do is we are going to the provider part of the system, and I'm actually going to change, because I want to show you community. I'm going to log in as CACLV because that's one of the referrals that we sent over. We're going to go to the provider side, and this is relevant for our referral partners, those that may receive, our shelters that may receive direct referrals, as well as those, that provide permanent supportive, transitional rapid rehousing, and, want to take a look at the list to see if you can pull anybody off. All of that information is within the provider tab. This is the circle. So you do have to change your, what we call, I guess they're called workspaces within HMIS or tabs. We want to go to the provider tab. And I'm actually going to pin my provider tab back. So when you go in here, this is basically going to give you all the options that are necessary for getting to the Eastern Community Queue. Now, one of the first things you want to do, as you can see here, you want to make sure that your proper provider is selected. Now, again, for most people are only in one organization, so it's not going to change. I have, a Valley Youth Pass up because I was doing something earlier, but you definitely want to make sure, especially if it's the first time you've gone in there, you want to make sure that you go to Access Provider up here, and then your organization will just pop up here, and all you have to do is select them. And you want to make sure when you go into the Provider tab that you see the name of your agency right up here up top. That kind of controls your permissions and your referrals and everything like that. So you do want to make sure that that's selected before moving forward. And, once you do it the first time, 99 out of 100 times after that, you're going to be fine. So just wanted to mention that. There will be 3 main folders that you can click on. And as you can see, as you click on them, the options open up for them. The Eastern Community Queue is actually within its own folder, and it actually is its own option here. These are some reports that you can run that we probably won't have time to get to today. But that's where the actual community queue is. Now, before we go to that, I do want to show you referrals. For our emergency providers that have received referrals, where you're going to find them, you'll probably receive some email, hopefully, that says, hey, you've got a referral from this assessment site for this client. What you'll need to do is log into the system, come to the provider area, and you're actually going to go to provider management, and there's actually a referral section. And you select it, and here is basically going to show all of the referrals, and it actually sends both. It's showing all the referrals for your agency, incoming, outgoing, accepted, rejected, that whole thing. Now, by default, it shows everything, which might be okay at first, but as hopefully we get going, referral partners are going to have more and more referrals. You're going to need to use these filters up here. So you can filter by incoming or outgoing. Incoming, they're coming to you, outgoing, you sent them, as well as status. We have 4 basic statuses. When a referral is sent, it's set to pending, and that basically means, hey, it's been sent, it's sitting in the requester's queue and waiting for an answer. Then we have 3, I guess, action statuses, which are accepted, rejected, and canceled. And we'll go into that once we go into an actual referral themselves. But basically, you're going to be going in here and searching incoming referrals and looking for any pending ones. And as you can see down here, here's the one that I sent for Tony Aikman for emergency shelter. And it'll actually show you who it's from, what the provider should do is you click on this option here. As you can see, each one of these blue balls basically provides, options for that record. You're going to go ahead and select accept or reject referral, because those are the two main things that you can do. Let me close this again so I can open up the screen. Now, if we go down, it shows pretty much all the same information that we had before, but now we've got this outcome information section, and it is set on pending. Basically, you've got a choice to make, those that are receiving referrals to either accept it or reject it. There's also a cancel. Basically, rejected and cancel are the same thing. That the way it goes is if you accept a referral, that basically means, you agree to fulfill the service request. And in this case, we're only sending referrals at this time for emergency shelter. So that basically means I agree, I have space, the client's eligible, I'm going to give them a bed in our facility. So if that's true, you hit accept it. However, if for whatever reason, you don't have any room, the client's not eligible, you never hear from them, the referral needs to be rejected. Now, I believe in a meeting that we had last week, they're looking for any referrals that are sent out by the assessment centers. They're looking for responses within 24 hours from the referral partners. So it's important to make sure that you check your emails for any referrals that may come in for HMIS, and then that you get into the system, especially for our shelters, and take a look at them to see if you can accept or if you need to reject them. Because, of course, if you accept them, you're good to go. You can house the client. Their immediate housing solution is taken care of. However, if you reject it, then additional actions need to be taken. So at this point, you basically select one of them. You enter in the acknowledge date. This result is completely, right now we don't really use it. We may use it in the future for reporting, but it is the status that is really important. And we've also got this send response. I would actually make sure that's checked for even accepted. It automatically checks it for rejected. But the send response, basically, it'll send an email automatically back to the sender, whoever sent it, to tell them what happened with the referral. It'll give them the status. It'll say, hey, this referral is accepted, or hey, this referral is rejected. Now, at this point in time, if the referral is rejected, any referral that is rejected or canceled is required to enter in a referral note down below to give a reason why. So you will need to enter in a referral note, a new one, and it'll actually kind of auto-fill in for you here, rejected, cancel, and you need to put in, beds, no beds available. And then you hit save. And now, and as you can see, here's the coordinated intake notes. You can also look through them. It'll actually show, here's the first send, here's the second send with the rejected, cancel, and it actually is probably going to send the email right back to me since I was the one that sent it. You can go ahead and hit finish. and it is done. So that's a good thing. So if you do reject it, you do need to enter in a reason why. Now, what I'm going to actually do is go back to, I'm going to switch over to, I believe it was Safe. I think Safe Easton I sent the other referral to. Same thing, make sure you add them there. You go ahead to referrals. There it is for Tony Aikman. There he is. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to do an accept. As you can see here, here's actually the referral response in my email. It actually came up. And as you can see, it's sent right back to me, PAA referral response. This is when it was sent, referral response sent by me. This email is going to refer you that has been rejected, canceled, and it actually adds the notes down there as well. That's kind of a neat feature. So at least the sender, the assessment center then knows, oh, well, all right, I need to get in touch with this client. We need to send some more referrals to try to get this client taken care of for a housing need. However, if you have sent out multiple ones, you can wait for possible acceptance of one of the referrals that you send out, because in this example, we're going to go ahead and accept this referral. Now, if you accept it, a referral note is not required. However, like we said, we always recommend entering in referral notes whenever you can. Now, at this point, it will refresh. And basically, a referral, once you send a referral to a requesting agency, once you accept it, it kind of does a data import. Basically, the client and any household members that you send will then automatically be, pulled into that agency, and you can do data collection on them just like you would any other client that you manually entered. Because the basic idea is to try to use the base HMIS standards or functionality along with this coordinated entry model. And here's actually the accepted email as well. That's why we've got to actually start an enrollment here. And this is more for referral partners. I know some of the assessment centers just do the assessment site, so they're not still familiar with the base HMIS functionalities. But you can go ahead and start an enrollment right there and begin the process. So those are referrals, and I know we're getting real close to the end of time. Community queue, we want to show you. You just click that option, and it basically is going to give you a list of all the clients currently on the queue. And it actually, I believe, goes by reverse chronological order of the oldest to newest. It shows each individual record, and it is kind of by household, although the head of household is the main person that it's listed by. Shows, demographic information, what county. It also shows their VI SPDAT information. And this is actually, especially for our referral partners, this is the area where they can view the list, they can see these clients, and they can actually go in and view referrals, assessments, and information for that. And as you can see, it also shows all these service needs. So the basic idea as referral partners is, hey, I've got an open permanent supportive housing bed. Oh, I've got an opening transitional housing bed in Lehigh Valley. What you want to do is jump on this list, come up here and filter, okay, by permanent supportive housing and by Lehigh, and it will give you a list of all the clients. This is tests, so these are all test clients. So the real list is actually quite large, and we've been working on doing some scrubbing. But it will return all the clients that match, you know, that criteria. So at least you don't have to surf through every client, but at least gives you a good starting point. At this point, you know, you can kind of take a look at the VI SPDAT score, you know, hey, or a family or single adult, depending on who you serve, and you can kind of take a look at them through both the intake notes. They can actually see them as well to go in and take a look at, you know, what's going on with this client. You know, have they had referrals, any information that would be relevant to me? Is someone working, you know, maybe another permanent supportive housing program is has them in, is doing eligibility and ready to enroll them right now. So you would want to skip that client. So you definitely want to check out the notes before diving too far in with this client itself. Now with the options here, basically we've got the notes, and then we've got the review community queue record. So if you're interested in taking a look at a client, that actually takes you to the details of the client itself, their service needs, county, and it actually shows down here kind of a service review where it shows their services, and it shows any kind of outcomes, like if they've had any referrals sent to them, what is the status for it. As you can see, this is a test client, so that's kind of an odd statuses to have, but it provides information, you know, because if you see someone with a service and a referral status is accepted, that means they're being provided the service. You can probably skip that for the next person. Also, this is where you're going to get access or can have access to their VI SPDATs. And you can view them individually here by clicking on that and then also clicking on the view. That will actually let you view the VI SPDAT in the pop-up. Also shows referrals directly, you know, all the referrals for this client, just to get an idea of where they're at. Now, I know we're here to stopping point, so hopefully just about 5 more minutes I can kind of show you, hey, when I find a match, what do I do? You know, how do, because the basic whole process of this is, hey, we're putting clients on this list for, you know, rapid rehousing, transitional, and permanent supportive. We want providers to match up with these clients and provide them permanent housing. Once you find a client, how do I get them off the list, or how do I remove them? The best way is to go into their record, like we are here, and use this service acceptance option. This basically service acceptance option is a lot like the shelter provider accepting the referral, except you're doing the actual reaching out. Instead of the referral coming to you, you're actually going to the list to accept it. So you can click that option, and what it'll actually do is tell you, hey, you know, of these client service needs, which one are you working with? You know, you can say, hey, I'm permanent supportive, you know, I've done eligibility, got a bed for him, this guy's mine, I want to place him in my program. Now at this point in time, you go through this service acceptance and you do accept from queue. Now at this point, you only want to do the service acceptance is like the last step, kind of like accepting a shelter referral. That means, hey, I'm definitely going to serve this client. You know, I'm going to give them this service. So if you're just kind of working with them or, you know, just in the eligibility stage, don't go this far yet. I would just add in intake notes to let everybody know. Because once you go this far, basically everyone's going to know, you know, hey, okay, this guy doesn't need permanent supportive housing anymore. Now, at this point, it actually does the same thing as kind of an accepted referral. It pulls this client in and any household member into your agency, and then it allows you to actually start an enrollment, because that's actually the easiest and best way. You know, once you accept a referral or pull them off the list, is actually to take them and enroll them directly into your HMIS program. Because what the system will actually do is during the enrollment, it's got logic in there that actually searches the community queue, and we'll go, oh, hey, that guy's already on the queue, and I know you accepted him, and now I see you're enrolling him, so I'm going to pull him off the list completely and mark him as housed and good to go. So that's kind of an important step of not only accepting the referrals and accepting the service acceptance, but also doing the HMIS enrollment. Now, there is a manual way to do this as well. So say you're working with, like, say, diversion, you know, which doesn't really have a good counterpart in HMIS to do an enrollment, or you haven't got a chance to do the enrollment in HMIS. There is a manual way to update the list itself, and that is within the record itself, and it's on the status. And the statuses are basically broken up into these 5 statuses: new, reviewed, placed, closed, and turned away. Anybody that has a status of new or reviewed, and anybody placed on the queue as brand new is set up as new, those are considered active clients needing services on the list. However, if you set them to placed, closed, or turned away, they are considered no longer active and are no longer on the active queue. You know, we no longer need active housing services. You know, placed is actually the positive outcome, meaning, hey, this client was placed, ... into a permanent housing situation, or his housing situation was resolved. So if you select place, it asks actually for a placement destination. So to go in a shelter, permanent housing, basically match up which best fits their situation. And again, if you do an enrollment, the system will automatically do this for you. You know, it'll put them in place, and then depending on what you're enrolling them into, whether it's, you know, the program type, it'll actually intelligently record the proper options here. Now, the situations with closed and turned away, these are kind of considered negative or benign outcomes, meaning, you know, well, the client didn't, you know, he didn't receive permanent housing services, or, you know, he wasn't placed in the permanent housing, but as far as we know, he no longer needs to be on the active list. And this is actually what we've done in our last scrubs, is anybody that hasn't had any contact within the last 4 months, 120 days, we are closing these people off to help manage the list. Now, you can do that manually yourself as well, and if you do select closed or turned away, it basically asks you for a non-placement reason. You know, did not meet homelessness, declined further contact. You know, a lot of them are because they declined further contact, or they cannot be reached. Maybe they moved out of county, moved out of state, moved out of COC, who knows. But those options are there. And I'm going to actually place this person because we actually did. I'm going to say my service provided him with permanent supportive housing. And once you've updated the status, you hit save. And this was actually, I think it was Johnny Manziel. And as we can see here, there's an active and a historical list. So when someone's placed or closed or turned away, they're not deleted or removed. We keep all the data. It's just they're moved over to the historical side. So you can still see them. As you can see, all the statuses here: placed, closed, turned away. That way, you know, they're still there. They can still be looked at. If a mistake was made, you can change the status back to, you know, reviewed and put them back on the list. But it's the active one that we need to work on and keep looking at for current services. Okay, I think that is it. I know we're about 7 minutes over, and I apologize, and I appreciate all those that have stayed. For those I have recorded this training, and what we'll do is we'll try to get this available to everybody as soon as possible. There is another training at 1 o'clock. I'm pretty much going to go over the same thing. It'll probably go to 2:30 or probably 2:37. It's based on today. If anybody has any questions, please enter them in the chat and let me know. It says, will the live version also have a referral zone search? As of right now, it just has the county search. As most of the programmer, I have put in steps to add referral zones if needed, but as of right now, there's no referral zones right now. It's just by county. But that's something that I think is planned and we can look into in the future, especially once we start, as we start adding the new RABs and they start doing their own pilots.